Oh, yeah. Wasn't important then, was it?
Yeah, he's good. I got to take a few days off. So that's a little much.
Really?
Yeah.
So Mike gets his turn out.
All right, let's get started. Everybody find your seats. Grab a snack, maybe. I'd like to call this meeting to order, the time being 11:30 a.m. on February 16th, 2022. I'd like to call this meeting to order of Kane County's American Rescue Plan Committee. Clerk, please call the roll.
Bates,
Bates here.
Brown,
Brown here.
Frost, Gums,
Gums here.
Kenyon,
Here.
Leonard,
Leonard here.
Martin,
Martin present.
Molina,
Molina present.
Strothman,
Stratzman present.
Tepe,
Tepe here.
and Sanchez.
Okay, we have a quorum and apparently a dog. I don't know if you online. Is it Nugget? Dog. Nuggets here. All right. I need someone to ask for unanimous consent to approve the minutes of February 2nd, 2022.
So move. Tepe here.
Mr. Tepe moves for unanimous consent to approve the minutes. Any objection? Hearing none, the minutes are approved. Public comments on agenda and non-agenda items. I don't see anyone here in person. Is there anyone online who wishes to address the committee for public comment today? Okay, hearing none. Chairman's comments. I want to try and keep this meeting brief. I know there's kind of a lot to go over. I will do my part to get you out of here as quickly as possible. We're going to go through the appeals like we did the last time, and then just a couple things to touch base on with the committee about the process from here on out. So first I'll go to program manager update. Mr. Phillips, do you have anything for us outside of
Nothing beyond what we'll talk about
information that
today.
they've been getting? Okay.
No.
All right. I know Mr. Phillips has had his nose down, grinding away at working on our back end system, the SharePoint site and other things. So we appreciate that work, Mr. Phillips. For the appeals, we'll just go through the same process that we went through last time. I think that worked pretty well. So we have 7 appeals today, 7 organizations, and I will briefly go through these, give a short description, and then we will go through and vote on these. And at that time, if there's any discussion to be had, we will have it while we go through the vote. So the first one, and all of these either came in after the close of the portal or before they had contacted us and said, hey, we might not technically qualify, but we think we're so close. Would you consider having the committee look over our applications? So for a few of these, that was the case. And that's the case for the first 2. We have the Ecc Spartan Pantry and the Rush Copley Foundation Pantry. So these are 2 organizations that do run food pantries, but it is not their primary mission. So based on our screening criteria, they don't qualify for our program because of that. And that's why they're coming to the appeal here. But they are large organizations, ECC and Rush Copley Hospital. But the food pantries they run are regular food pantries. They have a location, they have normal operating hours. It's not just, once a month or quarterly where they put some food out. So ECC Spartan Pantry and Rush Copley, both providing great service with students and with patients. Lots of food insecurity in the student population, as well as many of the patients going to Rush Copley. So they're helping to make sure that people have access to food. The next one, Lift Aurora. They are coming under the mental health category as a request. They do not provide direct mental health services. What they do is lots of programming with music and arts for lower income people in Aurora. And the argument is that the arts and the experiences that they have through the arts helps improve the mental health of the citizens that engage in the programming. They also provide food for the guests there, the free programs, and they also provide food because food insecurity is such a huge problem in that area. And many of the people that go to Lift Aurora are, the kids don't always have 3 meals a day, let's just say that. So that's part of their mission is providing free programming in the arts for residents, as well as providing food as kind of a side benefit. So they're asking for consideration within our mental health 2 category. Maddie's Mitten March, I didn't know where to put this under food pantry, homeless shelter, because as they say in their appeal, they're kind of a service that supports food pantries and homeless shelters. They aren't direct providers of mental health services or anything in food pantries or homeless shelters, but for the people that go to pantries, homeless shelters, and need mental health services also, they do provide clothing, winter clothing for those people who need it. If you can imagine not having a jacket because your family can't afford it and the kind of mental health stress that would create. So that's why they are appealing to us under the mental health or at least under one of the categories. I think probably mental health would be the one. But that's what they're asking. They do need new space. So how much we can help them with that is very questionable unless it's in the form of rent and utilities. And they seem to indicate that that's what they would be using it for. So they're asking for us to consider them. Indivisible Aurora, they came under the food pantry category. They're not technically a food pantry. They have a community fridge that is housed in a location, and the fridge is stocked with food that either comes from food pantries or donations, community gardens, even restaurants that have good food that they have to get rid of. There are volunteers that try and bring some of that food to the food fridge that Indivisible Aurora puts together. So it's not their primary mission to run a food pantry. It's not an actual food pantry, but it's kind of right outside of the category. They want to expand what they're doing and purchase some more fridges for other locations in the Aurora area to service the food insecurity they're seeing out there. Anderson's Animal Shelter. This one was a little unusual. They did ask for $19 million. I think that's just the total that they're looking for a new building that they're trying to put together. They would come under mental health too. Obviously, it's an animal shelter, so people buy pets there, and some could make the argument that in and of itself is mental health service. But they do have other programming with veterans and things like that to offset some of the mental health issues residents have by connecting them with pets and animals. And so they're asking for consideration under that category. And the last one, Global Community Concepts, came in under homeless shelter. They are not a shelter. It's sort of uncertain what they do. They do provide services, it seems, to help people with housing insecurity issues, to maybe get them an overnight stay place or to help them to get into a regular home or an apartment of some type. We reached out to them multiple times. We never heard anything back from them. So we just figured we'll at least include them in this appeal process because otherwise they don't qualify. They're not a homeless shelter, and we don't include the whole category of housing in our program. So these are the 7. I sent the document out ahead of time to everyone to read. So hopefully, and that's why I'm going so quickly through these. So hopefully you had a chance to look over everything and have some determinations made. So we're going to go through one at a time. We'll go back to the Ecc Spartan Pantry. And before we take a roll, is there any discussion on this application?
Mr. Chairman, this is John Martin. May I ask a question?
Yes, Mr. Martin, go ahead.
Just if we've been given this information, I apologize in advance for the shortcoming of the question. But where do we stand now on the economics of the $4 million as it relates to the charities beyond the big 6 that we gave money to. Have we spent that money now?
No, we're in the process. Once we determine these final appeals today, we will have all applications in. And we, with Ernst & Young, will be creating a spreadsheet, an initial spreadsheet for the committee's consideration.
But we do have asks that exceed the amount of money that we have previously been authorized the board to spend. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm. Yeah, and the committee indicated that they would like to have a hand in winnowing that total number down. So that's the process. And we're going to discuss that later in this meeting. I need some input from the committee on that. So Ecc Spartan Pantry, I heard somebody else wanted to make a comment. Is that Ms. Molina?
Mr. Chairman, this is Bill Leonard. Could I ask a question?
Yep, go ahead, Mr. Leonard.
Thank you. Piggybacking on Mr. Martin's comments about the 4 million and how we have more requests than we have money here. Since these 7 initial requests were denied by, I believe it was Ernst & Young, if I'm not mistaken, I'm wondering if they have, number one, any thoughts about these appeals and whether that changed their mind at all. And then the other thing that I was a little bit concerned about was, I'm assuming that all of these organizations are run on a volunteer basis. And I'd kind of like to know what their balance sheets look like, what their payroll is, if they have any, what their other expenses, because in reading over the 7 different sources that are appealing after denial, it looks like most of them have very little or if any, expense. And I just wanted to verify that. And then finally, I guess I'd like to say, since we have more requests than we have money, and these 7 were initially denied, I would tend to look at not approving monies for these until we were confident that all the ones that did qualify were funded adequately. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Leonard.
Mr. Chairman, Bates.
Mr. Chairman, this is Molina.
Ms. Bates and then Molina.
I'll let Molina go first, please.
Ms. Molina, then Bates.
Hi, thank you. This was just a feedback for Mr. Leonard. I believe 2 weeks ago, we went through the initial review, and there were a few on that list that didn't quite meet the criteria of what we had originally requested when we submitted when we put out these applications. So I don't think these were denied per se by Ernst & Young. I just think they were flagged because they weren't cut and dry like some applicants were. And last meeting we did appeal some of these, and we did push them through to continue review through Ernst & Young. So I guess I don't like to use the word denied by Ernst & Young because that's not necessarily what has happened. And I'd like to go through some of these applicants because as we had discussed at the last meeting, the criteria for mental health is pretty wide, and the definition of mental health services should be kind of reviewed. So I guess just that information for Mr. Leonard. I don't think I would use the word denied, Mr. Chair. I guess correct me if I'm wrong, but just wanted to put that out there. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Molina. I mean, it's technicality of terms. They're all denied because they don't meet the criteria of our program in one way or another. But we're here now to say maybe we will give them approval ultimately. And Mr. Leonard, just to address one thing that was brought up at the last meeting about balance sheets, how much, what kind of money these organizations typically see. And that was discussed with Ernst & Young. It's a pretty unorthodox move in grant space to require that kind of information. And it would be somewhat cumbersome just with our time constraints to go through all of our applicants and request those kinds of documents. We'd have to have some kind of standardized document that they show us. They might not all do their books the same. And some might outright deny access to that information. And just in the interest of the timing we have for this program, and again, the unorthodox nature of asking for that kind of information, we decided against it. But if you do look at the amount of residents that they service each year, that gives some indication of the organization size, how long they've been in operation also. can be a good indicator.
Mr. Chair,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the
Please.
explanation on that.
Bates, please.
Ms. Bates.
Thank you. I wanted to reiterate what Ms. Molina said. That's why I let her go first. She always speaks so well. These were not denied. This is why we have an appeal process, because some of these may need more discussion. And it is a way for us to refine and redefine our criteria, such as if a huge organization like Rush Copley has a food pantry, no, that's not their primary mission, but it's still very valuable for us to look at. I believe that a lot of their budgetary information is in the portal application itself. Did all of these organizations apply through the portal and then were sent to appeals?
So I think ECC Spartan Pantry is the only one that selected other primary mission and got the official denial. All of the other ones did put applications into the system. And so there are budget tables there, and I apologize. I thought the budget tables were included in the form that I added on to each of these entries. I didn't double check. So the budget tables aren't in there. I apologize, but it is on the SharePoint site. And if you look at the spreadsheets that I've handed out to you with all of the applications, you'll see the amount that they're asking for, that they're requesting.
So Mr. Leonard could find much of the information he's asking for in information that we already have, correct?
Yeah, and if anyone has any questions about where to find the information they're looking for, they can just reach out to me or Peter.
Good, great, thank you.
Mhm.
And I had another question. Do we get to comment on these as we go through?
That's what we're doing right now.
Okay,
Okay, any other questions or comments on ECC Spartan Pantry before we vote?
Are we going to go through each one?
We're gonna vote each one, yeah.
Okay,
You ready for that?
I'm ready.
All right,
on your mark and set, go.
right. Okay, hearing no other questions or comments, clerk, could you please call the roll for approval or not of ECC Spartan Pantry?
Bates,
Yes,
are we doing approval for ECC Spartan or?
Yes, this would be to approve.
Hey,
Sorry, I made that confusing.
Yeah.
The Spartan Pantry is for the students at ECC. So it's just a very narrow group of people that are eligible to use it.
Mhm. Yes, for the students.
And I don't think that would meet our criteria, like the regional food bank is for 13 different food banks.
Yeah, well, so
And
Mr.
this
Kenyon,
is only for the students.
that's why we put them through this process, because they're close to what our main considerations are. for
It's
the
a
program.
nice thing, but if it's only for the 5,000 students there,
Well, that's why we're voting on it here. So yes, this is vote to approve ECC Spartan Pantry. We'll just do all of these in that form.
Okay. I'll start over. Bates,
yes,
Brown,
No.
Bras, Gums,
Gums, no.
Kenyon,
no.
Leonard,
Leonard, no.
Martin,
Pardon, no.
Molina,
Molina, yes.
Strothman,
Strathman, yes.
Tuppy,
Tepe, no.
and Sanchez.
Sanchez, yes.
Motion failed 4-6.
Okay, the next one, Rush Copley. The hospital that runs a food pantry also. Any questions or comments on this one?
Martin has a
What does
comment.
that benefit?
Martin has a comment whenever it's time.
Mr. Kenyon asked, who does the benefit is for the people that go to the hospital? So patients and patients of doctors that go there for services and things like that. And when they're identified as being, having low income potential, this is one of the things that they're informed about. Like if you need food, might help you from coming back here,
We get 15 organizations trying to do what one or two could do.
I disagree.
I'm not surprised.
Mr. Martin?
I feel relatively strongly about this. Rush Copley is a wealthy healthcare entity. And we're balancing their requests for money, even though technically it might be a 501c3 and be separate, against people who have no underlying support except the community effort. And not only did Rush Copley not comply with the rules or apply late and address other issues, but there's a parent there that has extensive resources that could meet this need. And I will be voting no because I don't find it to be a community supported activity.
Mr. Chairman, Leonard, may I make a comment?
Mr. Leonard, go ahead.
Yes, I will be voting no on this also for many of the reasons that Mr. Martin brought up. I feel that what they do here is a worthwhile thing. However, this is a foundation. And for a foundation to ask us for money for this very specific need. And in reading over the information, it sounded to me like basically what they were doing is they were giving food bags to families of patients, which is very admirable. But I just think at this point, it's sort of such a small segment of the population. I will be voting against it.
Thank you, Mr. Leonard. Any other questions or comments on Rush Copley Foundation? Okay, clerk, please call the roll to approve Rush Copley Foundation.
Bates,
Bates, yes.
Brown,
No.
Braz, Gums,
Gums, no.
Kenyon,
No.
Leonard,
Leonard, no.
Martin,
Martin, no.
Molina,
Molina, yes.
Strathman,
Strathman, no.
Tepe,
Tepe, no.
and Sanchez.
Sanchez, no.
Motion failed 2-8.
Okay, the next one, Lift Aurora. Any questions or comments on this one before we vote?
Molina, can I comment, please?
Yes, Ms. Molina, go ahead.
This particular organization I'm really familiar with. They began in Aurora over a decade ago. And their main mission has been to reach out to children who otherwise wouldn't have access to different forms of art. They also had a bookstore that closed down, and they're looking to kind of revamp their bookstore where they would provide books for $1.50 for people who couldn't afford it. But when we look at the numbers and we see things like our teen suicide numbers skyrocketing, I think organizations like this really help to bring these kids together and just give them a space to talk where they otherwise wouldn't have a safe place to do that. So I urge my committee members to please approve this. Thank you.
Bates, please.
Ms. Bates, go ahead.
Yes, this is an organization that has been a very positive force in Aurora. It is run by the head is a social worker. I think they have another social worker working there. So this, I believe, would come under something along the lines of preventive mental health agency. I believe we don't have to call mental health only psychoanalysis, therapy, counseling. It can be something that helps us to keep our youth and all of our residents healthier in a better mental health state. So I will be voting yes for this.
Mr. Chairman, could Leonard make a comment?
Leonard May.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I admire and respect both Ms. Molina's and Ms. Bates' opinions. However, I do feel in the Aurora land area, we do have a wonderful public library and a very good school system that can offer these services, maybe not as specific as this program, but I don't really feel that this is an adequate use of the limited $4 million we have. I think there are more needy causes. So respectfully, I will be voting no.
Thank you, Mr. Leonard. Any other questions or comments? Ms. Molina?
Just to clarify, sorry, the Culture Stock Bookstore is no longer operated by this organization. It was just I was just throwing that out there as an example of one of the ways that they've reached out and have become community partners with different social service organizations, but that's not something that they're currently doing. I don't think that's what they were looking to spend their grant money on.
No, thank you, Ms. Molina. They indicated they actually have a new location now, so they would be spending their money on rent, utilities, and then art supplies, as well as the food they provide to the attendees. Ms. Gums?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have spoke many times about mental health issues, and it's extremely important to me. It is not a singular solution. When we speak of the arts, and there's so many tentacles to helping mental health issues, I am going to support this wholeheartedly because mental health is mental health is a result of many things that come prior to that. So whether it's food insecurity or housing insecurity, we also have engagement insecurities. And although we have folks that can get to the library or they can do different things with their families, there are many, many more that cannot. And this is an outreach program. So that's what we need to do. So I will be supporting this. I think it's in the long term essential for the health of our residents here in King County.
Thank you, Ms. Gums. Any other questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman, this is Alan.
Ms. Allen, go ahead.
I'm not on the committee, so I'm butting in. I really appreciate the comments that Ms. Bates and Ms. Molina and Ms. Gums have said. Can you help me though with, I have a number of wonderful museums, small museums, largely funded by their donor base. Can you help me see the line between the outreach of this organization and the outreach that my museums, our museums are trying to make also in terms of helping people with mental health? I'm not sure I would use this money to fund the museums, but I see that there's a line there and I'm not sure how to cross it. Thank you.
Gums has her hand up. I'll let her take this.
Yeah, something that stuck out for me was this is organized and helped operated by a social worker, which is kind of a key thing for me. So that person who is doing that outreach has expertise in mental health. That really struck me as important in that area.
Thank you.
Bates, please.
Bates, go ahead.
I believe that one of the things that LIFT has been well known for is building relationships in the community between LIFT and our residents and between the other residents, building a fellowship amongst these young people. There was a study recently that said that loneliness causes pain that is so real that if you take a Tylenol, it might help a little bit. And I believe that this kind of disconnection in our community causes mental health problems, causes suicide problems, causes opioid problems. I really believe that some of these these preventative measures are very much worth our money.
Thank you, Ms. Bates.
This is John Martin. May I make a comment, please?
Mr. Martin, go ahead.
And this is going to apply to, I'll only say it this time, it applies to previous and to the ones after. My concern overall on the appeal process is that we established rules that were intended to be fairly narrow because we had a fixed sum of money and we knew that we were going to be oversubscribed. I'm not arguing or opposing the genuine need that is being addressed by these appeals, but what concerns me about voting yes in the context of basically expanding the description of what we are doing beyond what we had contemplated or what we need to do to spend our money is that every nickel that we provide dilutes the support that we would have otherwise been able to give to organizations that A, clearly comply, and B, complied on time. So I have this conversation is tending more toward should we expand the term or discuss the definition. And I don't know that that's what the appeal process was intended to do. I think that the appeal process is intended to say, did they in fact comply in substance? And I know that this is an argument of nuance, but we've already got our money spent on people that we know clearly did it. And so I am concerned about expanding the number of people we're going to consider, because that eventually is going to dilute those who clearly are under the umbrella of this program. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Mr. Brown?
Yeah, Brown speaking. Mr. Martin said exactly, maybe more eloquently, you know what I'm trying to say, than what I would have. But I want to add to that if we were to approve this, or I think any one of the others that we're looking at here today, that is saying something to the community of a lot of these other organizations that did not apply and or go through the appeal process because they knew they didn't fit within this criteria that we set out. So I don't think it would be, maybe fair is the right word, to approve these because they went ahead and approved or applied for something that they weren't eligible for, where other organizations followed the rules. And I know society today has a hard time following the rules, but I applaud those people that do try to follow the rules. And I applaud these people for trying to, go after what they can because there is a need for it. But I just can't see expanding this program at this time. We set the rules out, we set the criteria out, we set out a certain amount of money, and we've exceeded that amount of money. So how can we possibly expand the rules?
Mr. Chair Bates, please.
Ms. Bates?
I hate to do this to us, but I would like to understand better what the exact rules were for the mental health 2 group. Could Peter help us with that? What was our exact criteria?
Do you have that handy, or any of you guys have that handy? I don't know where I have it on my computer. I'm not going to go looking for it right now. Essentially, mental health services. That was the general description. So, and
But, so it's not defined as therapy or counseling or.
I don't remember the definition we had for it offhand. So
So this is not necessarily going beyond the definition of the mental health 2 group.
Well, just hold on. Peter's got his hand up. Go ahead, Peter.
Well, excuse me, Peter Phillips here. Ms. Bates, the criteria specifically, as it was considered, was that their primary mission had to be mental health, provision for mental health services. So these 5, I believe all 5 of them, do not meet that criteria as their primary mission. They have services that are other than their primary mission that include the mental health component or a food shelter component. But the criteria as set by the committee that it be their primary mission is not a measure that they meet.
Thank you.
Just, I think we covered this last time, but the reason we did appeals is just learning from CARES Act. There were things that came in after the fact that we considered. We wanted to have a little wiggle room for that, and just knowing it is a very strict program because we are moving along a timeline, a shorter timeline. And it was determined that the appeals would be a good way just in case we miss something, but it gives the committee the power to make exceptions if they so choose. So this is here, it's not so much a matter of definition as it is decision. So I'd just like to put that out there. Mr. Brown?
One last comment. I also looked at the appeal process as a good process. Should we not get enough applicants to use up all $4 million?
Yes.
If we only had $3 million worth of requests and we allocated $4 million, then certainly I think we would maybe look at these appeals a little bit differently. But because we don't have the money, that's why I'm sticking to what I'm sticking to.
Any other questions or comments?
Question, Shepro.
Shepro, go ahead.
So maybe I just wasn't listening carefully. So if you grant any of these appeals, what happens? Does that mean that the rest of the money gets reshuffled to match because we're already at the max?
If any of these appeals are approved, as last time, they're just included in the full stack of applications that we have for the program.
Mr.
Which are
Chairman,
oversubscribed.
Bates, please.
We're oversubscribed, yes.
Bates, please. Nothing has been.
Hold on, Bates. Hold on, Bates. Shepro, was that your?
Yes, that answers my question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Bates?
Yeah, nothing has been allocated yet, correct?
That's correct.
Nothing has been given or taken away So we are still very much in flux here,
Yep.
very flexible.
Well, we're very close to the end. So any other questions or comments on this before we vote? Okay, clerk, please call the roll to approve Lift Aurora.
Bates,
Yes,
Brown,
No,
Bras, Gums,
Gums, yes.
Kenyon,
No.
Leonard,
Leonard, no.
Martin,
Martin, no.
Molina,
Molina, yes.
Strothman,
Strathman, yes.
Tuppy,
Debbie, no.
and Sanchez.
Sanchez, yes, but that leaves us tie because we're missing a member, which is a situation I hope to avoid. So I'm not sure what to do about that.
Were you a yes?
I vote motion fails
Why?
Because it didn't.
because that's what Robert's Rules of Order says.
If there's a tie,
If somebody had made a motion to deny the appeal and it was 5-5, that motion would have lost.
Huh.
so because it's tied, it fails, is what you're saying? Mr.
Yes.
Shepherd?
Yes.
Okay. Right. I should know Robert's rules that well. Okay, next
I'd like
one,
to make
Matt.
a motion, Mr. Chairman.
What's that?
I would like to make a motion to deny this request.
Oh, man.
Well, we would come to
I
the same
I think
vote.
that's out of order because you've already denied it by a failure to grant it.
But we could approve it by a motion to deny it.
Ms.
No,
Bates,
motion to deny, it's already denied.
I want
based
to
on the
make a new
votes, Ms.
motion.
Bates, based on the votes, there would be no change by any new motion, unless any member of this committee that previously voted would like to change their vote.
No, but
unless-
Mr. Chairman, if I make a motion to deny it and it ties, then that denial would be a failure and then it would be passed.
No, it just means it's not denied.
Okay,
But you've already moved to approve it and it failed. So you can move to reconsider if you voted on the prevailing side, but the prevailing side is effectively the no vote. So one of the 5 people who voted no would have to move to reconsider it, and then it could be reconsidered. I mean, the other thing you could do, I suppose, is you could essentially reconsider it and defer it till your missing member is available.
Which we don't have the time to do. Ms. Bates?
Yes.
I rest my case.
Okay, thank you. All right, so the next one is Maddie's Mittens March. Any questions or comments before we vote on this?
Mr. Chairman, Berman,
Mr. Berman, go ahead.
I've been very familiar with this. It started out, it's very unique, very different. So therefore, there is not a category that it really fits into. But here's a service that it is unique, providing warm winter clothes for those in need. And I think the approach they've taken is to a mobile, bringing that to the different places that people would be requiring it. And then what they're looking for is some financial support for a place to store their vehicles and whatever. But I think that they provide a very unique service to the people in King County, those that are in need of warm clothes. So I hope that you support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Berman. Anyone else? Okay, clerk, please call the roll to approve Maddie's Mitten March.
Bates,
No,
Brown,
no,
Bras, Gums,
Can you come back to me?
We'll come back to her.
Kenyon,
No.
Leonard,
Leonard, no.
Martin,
Martin, no.
Molina,
Molina, yes.
Strothman,
Strathman, no.
Tuppy,
Debbie, no.
Sanchez,
Sanchez, yes.
and Gums.
Gums, yes.
Motion failed 3-7.
Okay, next one, Indivisible Aurora. Any questions or comments before we vote on this one? Kenyon, what do you got?
Which one is that now?
Indivisible Aurora, they're the ones that have the community refrigerator that gets stocked with food. So it's not technically a food pantry, but it provides free food to those that need it. And they want to expand. They want to buy more fridges. Any questions, comments? Ms. Gumbs?
So Mr. Kenyon, what this program does is it kind of places refrigerators for you.
I want to hear you.
I know you do. So they have a location that they set up a refrigerator. You can pull up and grocery shop from the refrigerator. And they're kind of like those little library boxes that you see on the corners.
Mhm.
Take one, leave one kind of thing. It's not a bad program. That's what they do though. That's
Can't they get this from the Aurora Food Bank or the Aunt Martha's or whatever it is down there?
Bates, please.
I believe that's where some of their food comes from, yes.
Ms. Bates?
Thank you, Ms. Gums, for that explanation, which was 100% correct. To answer the question about can't they go to a food pantry, food pantries have very limited hours, surprisingly, and they might be far away. Our food pantry is, well, everything is far away from some people. So this is the idea, to bring food to more places in the community for people who might not have the transportation to get to the food pantry and who might be hungry on the wrong day.
Thank you, Ms. Bates. Anyone else? Okay, clerk, please call the roll for approval of Indivisible Aurora.
Bates,
Yes.
Brown,
No.
Frost absent, Gums,
Gums, yes.
Kenyon,
No.
Leonard,
Leonard, no.
Martin,
Martin, no.
Molina,
Molina, yes.
Strothman,
Strathman, yes.
Tepe,
Debbie, no.
and Sanchez.
I would be a yes, but that leaves it at another tie, which makes it a denial.
But it was a tie.
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, the next one, Anderson's Animal Shelter. Any questions or comments before we vote on this one? Mr. Kenyon?
Anderson Animal Shelter wants to build a new place and they want to take not only the traditional animals, but they want to take care of large animals like cows and horses and goats and sheep. It's just totally, you could hire people to do that. You can't build a building and have all the staff you need to hire to take care of horses, cattle, and all that kind of. I think it's out of line with what we're trying to do. But if you want to keep moving the goal line, we'll never get done. We won't never have enough money. Everybody will get 50 cents. There won't be enough money for anybody to do anything.
I like the idea of Kenyon Farms.
Sure,
Yeah.
well, they could go out and hire a stable to take care of animals that were brought in. It's a lofty goal, but it's for people that have more money than we do.
Mr. Brown?
Great organization, but for the same reasons I've explained before, I can't support this.
Anyone else?
Tepe here.
Debbie?
What was the total amount of their request?
In the
18?
ballpark of $19 million.
Thank you. I want everybody to note
That
that.
would be bricks and mortar, and are we allowed to do bricks
No.
and mortar?
No.
Well, there you go.
No.
If you need a reason.
Okay, clerk, please call the roll to approve Anderson's Animal Shelter.
Bates,
Bates, no.
Brown,
No.
Frost absent, Gums,
Gums, no.
Kenyon,
No.
Leonard,
Leonard, no.
Martin,
Martin, no.
Molina,
Molina, no.
Strothman,
No.
Tepe,
Tepe, no.
and Sanchez.
Sanchez, no.
Motion failed.
Okay, our last one before we move on is Global Community Concepts. I did forget to add that this was also flagged as high risk and just lack of information and very questionable. That's my only comment. Any other discussion on this item?
I can't find anything about them. Even their website doesn't say really what they do.
Okay, clerk, please call the roll to approve global community concepts.
Bates,
No,
Brown,
No,
Cross absent, Gums,
Gums, no.
Kenyon,
No.
Leonard,
Leonard, no.
Martin,
Martin, no.
Molina,
Molina, no.
Strothman,
Strathman, no.
Pepe,
Pepe, no.
and Sanchez.
Sanchez, no. Okay, thank you everyone for going through that process. I believe that closes our appeals. And going forward, we'll now be able to go into final award selection, our award selection process. So that's something that we need to discuss now that we have other committee matters just for things that might not make the agenda deadline that come up that need to be discussed by the committee. So the first one being the award selection timeline. Actually, let me share my screen one more time. Beg your indulgence. So this is the timeline. Was given out, months ago. So you can see we're about right here. We're right here where that dark blue starts. And grant award decisions made by Kane County and distribution of grant agreements. So the first decision starts with this committee. This committee is going to go through a process that will make final recommendations to the county board that the county board will then vote on. Once the county board votes on these awards, then the paperwork can start coming in from the organizations and checks can start going out. This is the timeline we knew we were going to have. It's very compressed. We have a very, very, very small window of time in which to go through this process. That being said, there's a few different ways we could slice it, and I would like to hear from the committee today on which way you all would like us to go. So we have option A, which is going through with this very tight timeline, 2 revisions of the award amounts. So some of you are familiar with the Riverboat Committee. When they actually get to the committee, all the decisions have been made through email between the department head and the committee members. And so that's the process we will be going through. Mr. Phillips will send out the spreadsheet to you all once it's completed, most likely this Saturday. And then if we were to follow this timeline where we have to get everything before executive committee, which is on March 2nd, if we're going to get everything done in time for March 1st, you guys can't see the calendar on the screen, but that only gives us, if you get the documents on Saturday, that gives us just under, well, let's see, I'll count. About 7 days. We get about 1 week to go through 2 rounds of revisions. So 3, give or take 3 or 4 days for the first revision where you go through, you look at the starting totals for each applicant, and you decide, do you want to increase, John's community health service organization by $50,000? Do you want to decrease this food pantry by $50,000? You get to have your say. And then Mr. Phillips will collect all of those from you after a few days. He will create an average for each applicant, keeping everything within the total amounts for the category. And then he will send that back to you for a second revision. And then you will go through that over a process of a few days. And then what is totaled at the end of that process, just like the Riverboat Committee grant process, will be the final recommendation that we will vote on March 1st. So it's a tall order that will require all hands on deck to be attentive, to get all of this done in that short period of time. So I wanted to start off with that, as that's our option A, to get us to county board on February 8th, knowing that we have to go through executive committee. Option B is that instead of doing 2 rounds of revisions in the next week or so, we only do 1 round of revisions. So the spreadsheet you will receive on Saturday no matter what, will come as a result of Ernst & Young taking everything, and they have a formula, the formula concept we had discussed previously, and they will start us off with that. They'll apply the formula and get everybody down to a certain amount that will equal the total for that category. So $1 million for mental health 2, and so on. That will be the starting point. Now, we can do, again, option A is 2 revisions, option B is 1 revision. So in the same period of time, you get that spreadsheet, and maybe you have 4 or 5 days to get your feedback to Mr. Phillips, and he calculates the averages, and that goes into the resolution that we'll vote on March 1st. So option A, 2 revisions in the next week. Option B, 1 revision in the next week. That leads me to option C. Option C is that we don't move this to the February 8th county board, that we instead ask Madam Chair, who is not here, and I was hoping she would be here today. I understand she's very busy though. Approaching Madam Chair and asking her if we can have a special meeting of the county board specifically to vote on these final award amounts, which could then give us an extra week. I think 2 weeks is the minimum that we discussed on the team end as being reasonable. So if we were to do option C, that would give us and do a special meeting of the county board the second week or the third week of March with Madam Chair's blessing and approval. And yeah, we'll have more time to go through this process. I hope I explained that clearly enough for you all to understand.
Yeah, right.
So
Chairman.
Mr. Chairman,
there are 2
Mr.
revisions.
Chairman, may I make a comment to your timeline issue?
Mr. Martin.
Whichever route we determine, we need to have absolute drop dead dates. So that if by the close of business or whatever the timeline is, the time of the day is on a certain day, if you don't have your comment in, then you don't have a comment. So that we're not, because we're gonna, if we don't do it with a strict requirement, we're gonna be cruising along and asking for another special meeting or another delay.
Yeah, this whole process will come with firm deadlines. And if you want your ideas, your suggestions included, they'll have to be within those deadlines. We're not going to do
And
it.
I guess what I would conclude is if you don't meet the deadline, then what you've approved is the baseline that Ernst & Young put in place.
Correct. Ms. Gums?
Well, they say speak now or forever hold your peace. So I'm going to reject the $4 million, and I think it should be $10 million.
Well, that would require us going back to the drawing board a little bit. We would have
Fair.
to produce resolution that would have to go through county board.
Understood.
That would delay any money going out by at least a month, if not more. So just so any member can propose any idea they want, but just so you know, that would be the result.
I will reaffirm, I reject the $4 million. That was not the original intent of our initial conversations. It was a starting point, not a finish line. And I'm not good with it.
Yeah, I see your point, and I think for anyone that would want more money to go out in this direction, that's a conversation we need to have when we get to how are we going to spend the rest of the money? Do we want to do another program like this? Because there has been that conversation that this would be a first blush. But at this point, it's a little late for this program to go back and increase amounts. But again, that's a conversation to have if we want to do a round 2 and how much do we want to put out there? So to be determined, maybe at our next meeting, not today.
Mr. Chair Bates, please.
Ms. Bates.
I wholeheartedly support Ms. Gums in her intention. And I'd like to wrap up this one, sign the check, send them out and do it all over again with all the intentions of increasing this amount by a couple times at least. May I ask you to quickly summarize what you just said? I was writing as fast as I could, and I'm not sure I could.
Yeah. So because we have a strict deadline of needing to meet and select these awards before executive committee.
Which is the 3rd?
On March 2nd.
2nd, okay.
Yeah. So in order to meet that deadline, we have to go through a process over the next week, essentially. And option A would be for us to go through this process with 2 revisions. So you would only get a few days to do the first revision and a few days to do the second. It'd be
May
very
I
intensive.
stop you there? So we'll get a spreadsheet from Mr. Phillips on Saturday. And it's going to have names of organizations and amounts of possible grants, right? And
Yeah,
then
starting
that,
point.
okay, and that's what we have to quickly send Peter back our
Mhm.
opinions on if we agree or disagree with. And if we want to give more money to one organization, we have to tell him right away.
Yeah,
And
so
he'll average it.
the idea is a spreadsheet that you can edit yourself. You can
Okay, got
you
it.
can change the amount, so then you can see that you're still staying within the category total, and then
Okay.
Mr. Phillips will take those. And for those who find that cumbersome or difficult, they can, kind of print it out on paper, write it down and send it in.
Okay, thanks. And that, so option A is we do that 2 times.
Yeah, 2 times. Option B is we do it 1 time.
1 time.
And option C is that we appeal to Madam Chair for a special meeting of the county board. The 3rd week of March would be probably to get this done quickly, would be the likely target. And then
But we
that's
still have to
option
do
C.
the same thing. We just
We'll still have to
a
go through the same
little longer
process.
to do it.
Yeah, the committee indicated they want input on this, which is fair. And so that would give us 2 weeks to go through this process rather than 1 week. But we wouldn't be going to executive, so that's also part of the conversation is it would have to be understood that it's going straight to county board.
Does this have to go to exec?
Well, the guidance from the state's attorney's office is that resolutions coming out of this committee need to go to executive committee and then full county board.
Okay, I think I'm just gonna throw this out. Speak now, forever hold your peace. I think A is what we should do.
Okay. Mr. Tepe and then Mr. Brown.
Mr. Chair, Tepe here. I'm looking at the spreadsheet that has these applications dollar amount. And there are several things on here that are disturbing to me. One, there are approximately, I'll say 25 firms, organizations that have requested money associated just with the mental illness side. And we have $1 million there. It was, I believe, quite clearly noted on the application that the maximum amount should be $100,000. And yet over half of the firms put in requests for more than that. Okay, that to me is quite disturbing that they can't follow, in my mind, relatively straightforward instructions and instead say we want $2 million as one organization did. Okay. Second, we have 25, at least 25, maybe more, that are requesting just parts of that $1 million. So we need to decide in a relatively short time. This is not going to be an easy or a nice process, but we need to look at the fact that these firms couldn't follow relatively basic instructions and are putting in for a lot more money than had been allocated. So that has me disturbed, particularly in this arena.
And I'm not sure the theory behind that, but there were many applicants that put in well above what we're allowing for the total program. So it's interesting. Mr. Brown?
Mr. Sanchez, a lot's already been said now that I was going to say, but could you just remind the committee, as Mr. Tepe just said, maybe out of those 25 applicants, far exceeding the amount of money that's available. So the spreadsheet's going to have a recommended amount of money for each applicant, correct? So how is that formula determined?
I don't have it exactly in my mind, but essentially we'll look at how much we're oversubscribed. When we drop everybody down to $100,000, not the 2 million or whatever that some asked for, pare everybody down to 100,000, see how much we're oversubscribed, which I believe was about $3 million. When we looked at the spreadsheet last time, that was that spreadsheet. And then the formula will be applied, which will reduce, I think, first the largest amounts to bring them down. So however much we're oversubscribed is the percentage that applicants will be reduced. So those 100,000, those multiple $100,000 requests will all be reduced probably by the same amount. And then that will be the first iteration of that spreadsheet. Just a starting point for everyone work from and to, toggle up and down how they would like to select. And, there are some organizations that clearly have never seen that much money, $100,000. And so there may be some editorial decision-making in that first spreadsheet that, okay, they should maybe only be down at $20,000 or something, but it's up to the committee to alter those numbers once you receive that spreadsheet.
Thank you for that. It's going to be difficult as we review this because a lot of us may be very familiar with an organization that's within their community and want to support them wholeheartedly, where we may not be familiar with an organization that is in the other end of the county. So we got to be very careful how we say, well, I'm going to change my spreadsheet to give more to the community, to the organization in my community and take away from the other organization because I'm not familiar with them. It's just, there's no good way to do it, in my opinion.
There isn't. This is not going to be a perfect program or a perfect process because it's such a short timeline that we have for all of this. We knew that going in, it's not going to make everybody happy, but this was our way as an organization, as a county, to get money out quickly, but still be as fair as possible. And so, yeah, this is the tough part where we all get to make our decisions and we have to use our judgment.
Mr. Chairman, ma'am, this is
Mr. Martin,
John Martin. When
and then
it's
Bates.
appropriate. To Mr. Brown's point, if you get an organization that asks for $35,000 because they actually did a computation, and you have an organization that asks for millions of dollars who was shooting for the moon, as we evaluate this, and I think I'm addressing Vern's point, as you evaluate this, you need to look, I'm looking at it from the perspective of analyzing what somebody really asked for and not the moon they were shooting for. And I would conceptually hate to see somebody that asked for my example of $35,000 get cut by 50% just because we've got a bunch of them that have asked for millions that are all arbitrarily being cut to the 100, and there's no science to the 100 that they're asking for.
Yeah.
That's just that's just the cap. So I think we need to look at this, recognizing that we may, on an individual basis, and I agree with you, Jarrett, this is a kind of a crude process that we're going through here. But in my analysis, I want to look at what I think people have done in a legitimate analysis of their need, and not just saying, here's a pot, let's see what I can get from it.
Bates,
Yeah,
please.
and part of the conversation I've had with Ernst & Young, and I will be meeting with them actually later today, is for those that did come in well under $100,000, should they be, not penalized, but should they be reduced as well by 50% if that's the formula? So we had discussed a minimum threshold where, if you're not above 40,000 or whatever number, you don't get reduced. The big asks get reduced. The $100,000 asks get reduced, so that if somebody comes in much lower, because there are those who said, hey, we have no need for $100,000 in reimbursements, but we could spend 25. We don't want to say, well, you only get 10 now, sorry. And then these other players that really don't need the money, maybe. Again, like you said, it is a bit of a crude process, but that's the time constraints we're under. It's not going to be perfect. We're doing the best we can with all of this. And I think in the end, it will be a very good result.
Jarrett.
Bates, please.
I have Bates, Leonard, and then Brown.
To Mr. Tepe and a couple other speakers about those who were requesting over $100,000. I think we did not stipulate that you could not ask for over $100,000, that would disqualify you. And I believe maybe they were trying to indicate the real need, that they'd be grateful for $100,000, but that maybe the real need was far greater than that, which does help us in our future tranche, community support grant thinking. I'd like to agree with Mr. Martin for sure that this is too arbitrary to just chop them all back. So I think we need to give more thought to that. So thank you, Mr. Martin, for your comments. Thank you.
Mr. Leonard? Mr. Leonard, did you still have a question or a comment?
Chairman, what I wanted to mention was I like option A, where we have 2 rounds of evaluating the amounts. Having served on the Riverboat Committee for the last 7 years, a lot of times on the first vote, people may miss things or may not understand the process. And by having actually 2 chances to put your input in before it is finally decided upon, I think is very valuable. So I would recommend that we go with option A, as Ms. Bates had requested.
Thank you, Mr. Leonard. Mr. Brown?
I'm not sure if I should bring this up or not. I'm almost thinking that maybe there should be an option D, because
Oh,
this
boy.
is a very valuable or very important decision. And as you can see, everybody on the committee has had a comment, so we're all very concerned and very involved. So maybe trying to rush this is not the right idea. Maybe we should go with option A of 2 revisions, but not try to get it all done in the time constraint that you've brought out. Maybe we should, if this takes another month longer to do, it takes another month longer to do. I'm all for getting it done, but to try to get everybody on the committee to review these things and get Peter and Ernst & Young and Jarrett and everybody to get all this done in that time constraint may not be the right way to go.
Good point.
No, and that's why I wanted to bring this up to you, because I know myself, I would be okay with this kind of process as a committee member, but I understand not everybody will necessarily have the time, or it just may be, the technology, or just so many questions to be asked. They might want to have a little more time to do research. Option C would give us a little bit more time, 2 weeks. We could do 2 revisions in that, a week each. But option D.
And then C
Would be
would be
just-
bypassing the executive committee as well.
Yeah. Which most of the executive committee is present on this committee. But
Mr. Chairman,
option D would be then to just go through another month to get it on the April county board agenda. Ms. Strathman?
yes, I also support having 2 looks at this. It's sort of a value system. Another thing that I'm not hearing anybody say is the amount of the request. When I sat on the Riverboat Committee, the amount of the request, as I made my decisions, was weighed against their total budget. So, a $100,000 request, if it was 10% of a budget or 60% of a budget, had a different influence on how I made my decisions. And I think that's something that, if we do our due diligence as a committee, as I know we all will, that's something that we need to have the time to look at. So I think it's a good idea to, if it's option C or option D, I think, we want to do this right and do our job right. That's my thoughts about this.
Thank you, Ms. Strathman. Any other comments? Ms. Gums?
I like Mr. Brown's idea. I like it.
Okay, well, I think the most popular ideas being to A, have 2 rounds, and B, I guess having 2 rounds is the most popular. So we'll go with option A, 2 rounds in the next week. Get rid of option B. Option C is approaching Madam Chair about a special meeting. That will give us 2 weeks to go through 2 rounds. Or option D, we just put this out for April County Board and go through the process in that timeline. So I guess I'll just ask for votes on each.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Tepe.
I
have
motion,
an
that-
option
I
E?
I motion that we select option D and go for the April board meeting.
Okay,
I second that.
well, all right, well, we'll start with that. So let's vote.
Conversation, discussion?
Ms. Bates, hold on,
Um,
let me just announce what it is that we're gonna vote on and then we'll discuss. Option D being we prolong this to the April County Board and go through the process in that timeline. Ms. Bates.
Well, we have a first and a second, which is very important. But do we really want to stretch this out another month? What a shame. And do we need that other month? I'd just like to discuss if we really need that extra month. Can't the 10 people on this committee do this in a week?
Well, that's why we're here talking about it. Ms. Gums?
I first respectfully don't like the prolonged word. We want to do it right. Ms. Strathman had it, a key there. We want to do it right. And I think that although capable, we've got a lot of things going on. And I just think that we need to do it right.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, question, Shepro?
Mr. Shepro?
Yeah, how long would you envision the special meeting would take? Is it going to be a lengthy debate, or is it just because the board has to act, which might take 5 minutes?
It's simply because the board has to act and it could take 5 minutes.
I don't have the schedule in front of me, but you're looking at you're looking at a date that presumably is before April, but after the regular March meeting?
Yes.
If you're going to prolong it, wait till the April meeting.
April
No.
1st would be a good day.
No, all right.
And it
I
might
was
take
just
5
saying, I
minutes as a
assume that
quote
there's
from Shepro.
there's
not
gonna
myself.
be a committee of the-
April 12th is our next board meeting after March 8th.
Yeah.
Well, If you went to the committee, if you went to a special meeting at the same day as the March committee of the whole meeting, you'd save 3 weeks or more. Just a note. I don't know that I have an opinion on it, but I think
That'd be
that's,
the 22nd. March 22nd is committee of the whole.
all right, so that's 9/20, that's 3 weeks ahead of the
Yeah,
regular April meeting.
and 2 extra weeks beyond the 8th. So
Yeah.
it's 2 weeks after the 8th.
Yeah, it's an interesting idea. Ms. Gums?
So, Ms. Gums here, if we go with option D, there's nothing that would prevent us from having that special meeting if we get it done and are satisfied with.
Well, I would
With
say
it,
option
right?
D is county board. So option E is
Special.
committee of the
between then
whole,
and now. Yeah.
a special meetings. We'll just call that the option C instead of the third week of March, the day of committee of the whole, which would give us a couple more weeks to go through this process, at least 3 good weeks to go through this process, and then 3 weeks earlier than the next county board to get this approved, so that by the next county board in April, money would be going out
Right.
Bates, please.
potentially. Ms. Bates?
Are we going to, as Ms. Strathman said, are we going to try to get their budgets?
No, I had mentioned that earlier in discussion with Ernst and Young. It's a
Yeah.
bit of an unorthodox ask in this kind of grant program space.
So we're not going to have that information anyway.
No, we didn't ask for it up front.
Yeah.
Going back now would take a lot of time to
Right.
go to 78 or whatever different organizations. Some might deny our requests. There's no standardized form necessarily. A lot of potential
Right,
issues.
right.
there.
You did say that before. I was just wondering if we were going to try to ask now.
Yeah.
If that's part of why the extension was being asked.
Mr. Chairman, this is John Martin. May I
Mr.
speak?
Martin, go ahead.
I like Mr. Brown's idea and I like Mr. Shepro's idea. And I respect what I think to be correct on the chat line that Myrna put on about 7 people being able to call a special meeting of the board. And if that's procedurally correct, why don't we today set a special meeting 5 minutes before the scheduled committee of the whole meeting in March. And at that meeting, the plan is we're going to present the slate. It's an up or down vote. That we will have made the decision, just like we do with Riverboat. We don't have lengthy discussions at the full board on Riverboat. The board relies upon the diligence of the committee and we vote and approve it. So if we vote to set a special meeting 5 minutes before the committee of the whole meeting in March, and then put a timeline in together that lets us do it, don't we get home and everybody has more time and we, address the point that we maybe can get this done a little sooner. and get it done.
That's a motion. I'll second it.
Well,
And I'll vote for it.
Well, hold
I'll
on
vote
first.
for it.
Hold on. I don't know that 7 members are required. Vince, do you? He's checking right now.
I'm checking right now too.
I
You know,
believe
Miss-
it's in writing. We have to put it in writing in advance and send the notice to Jack, to Mr. Cunningham.
Yeah.
So it'd be 7 members who would have to sign off. So you can do it. It just, I think we can just ask our chair, our Madam Chairman to do it first. And if,
Yeah.
but I think for this committee now, I say it's something that's able to be done. Why don't we just go ahead and act on it? And if we don't need to do it because she calls the meeting, then it's that, but at least we have something concrete.
Assistant State's
Excellent.
Attorney Vince Coyle is at the podium to address the issue.
Yeah, that is correct. It does need to be in writing addressed to the clerk in order to do it that way. But just something also to keep in mind, the amounts, the totals will be a recommendation from Peter on the aggregate or average. It's not a final decision that's going to be presented. The recommendation would need to be discussed and voted upon at whatever meeting. So I don't know however long that would take, but the amounts would not be decided until it's done in an open meeting. So.
Yes, correct. So it would first get voted on by this committee and then go to county board for
Mr.
that
Chairman?
final approval. And now Vince, what is the number of board members? Is 7 sufficient to initiate a special meeting? He's checking right now.
Mr. Chairman Bates, please. quick
Hold on,
Third
Ms.
of the
Bates.
board. A third of the board.
A third of the board? Okay.
Are we
So-
forgetting
so we
about
need 8.
exec? Are we forgetting about executive?
No, but it's just
I think we forgot
the
about
side of the
executive.
conversation right now.
Shepro comment.
Mr. Shepro.
Yeah, if the board members or the chairman elects to call a special meeting, that bypasses exec on the subject matter of the meeting call.
Whoa, what?
Right. And if we do this
We can
on
bypass
the,
exec?
hold on, Ms. Bates, if
Yeah.
we do this on the day of committee of the whole, I think we would still fall. Or no, especially, never mind, ignore what I just said. Anyway, so I think the idea that, and of course, Madam Chair may just agree to put the special meeting up for us. So we may not have to take any action as the committee to initiate this process. So I'll be talking with her today on another matter. and I'll
Shepro
bring this
again,
up. Yeah, Mr. Shepro.
regardless of whether the chair calls it or the board members call it themselves,
Mhm.
if you call a special meeting, you have a special meeting. You don't have to go through any other committee because a special meeting has been called for that purpose.
Right.
So
Okay,
we
so-
don't have to go through exec?
Correct.
Correct.
Ms. Bates. Mhm.
Okay,
If you do it that way, if you do it another way, then you might have to go through exec.
So I think the first vote we should, and maybe the only vote we need on the issue, I'm going to start off with the concept of having a special meeting on the day of the committee of the whole in, and what was the date again?
3/22,
March 22nd.
March 22nd.
So having a special meeting on March 22nd of the county board, before that, not 5 minutes before, we may need a little more than 5 minutes, but that day before the committee of the whole for us to vote as the board. So we'll have to have a committee meeting before that to start the process, but this gives us more time and it still gets us out earlier than the April 12th county board. And just to show you guys one other thing, to give you another sense of the timeline involved here, once the county board approves the final awards, they have to start sending paperwork into Ernst & Young, who has to check everything. And there is a timeline for that. That has to go from them. There we go. So this is the timeline with the shortest duration to the longest potential duration for money to go out. So once they send expenses in, Ernst & Young, it takes a day, but then it has to go to the state's attorney for review. Finance has to look at it, which could take up to 2 days to 5 days. The auditor has a process that takes anywhere from 1 to 2 weeks. and the treasurer 1 or 2 days to get that final check out. So even once the county board signs off on this, it doesn't mean checks are going to be going out right away. The expenses have to come in first, and then anywhere from 12 to 27 days before checks go out. So another sense of urgency coming from me is because of this timeline issue. So I will stop sharing, and the vote is to go for a special meeting of the county board on March 22nd before committee of the whole. Mr. Coyle?
Just to clarify before it gets messy, was there a motion for option D?
motion.
And then was there a
Motion on the
second
floor,
already
yeah.
on that? Does that need to be voted on first or?
Would you retract your motion, Mr. Tepe?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Tepe retracts the motion.
Oh,
Mr. Chairman, this is Leonard. May I speak?
Mr. Leonard?
Yes, I think also what we should do is either have a vote or a consensus on having the 2 review process and not the 1 review process. So option A, which is a 2 review process, I think we need a consensus or a vote on that also.
Well, actually, Mr. Leonard, option A was a two reviews in a matter of a week. And I think what we're looking at is a hybrid of going to committee of the whole March 22nd, but going through a 2 review process before that.
So does that mean that we will not be voting on the final numbers on the March 1st meeting?
Correct.
Okay,
So-
great.
Yeah, and we won't have another ARPA meeting until we have something to vote on.
May I ask, this is John Martin, may I ask a question?
Yes, Mr. Martin?
What about the concept of, that you mentioned as being considered or has been considered about saying that the people who have asked for lesser sums of money have a baseline that matches their ask rather than being lumped in with the people who have maxed out their categories? Is that a consensus of this group? Is that not a consensus? Or what are we doing?
Well, that is something that I've already talked to Ernst & Young about as something that I would desire to have in that formula. So if there's any objection to that from the committee, then I'd like to hear that. But otherwise, that is the route we're going to take, Mr. Martin, is to make sure some of those smaller requests don't get reduced while other requests, could take a little more off the top of those.
Thank you. I would just like to know, as I look at it, that the starting point is, all of these are recommendations and that's it. But I'd just like to know that the starting point is at that juncture. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And perhaps in the spreadsheet, it can show the amount requested up to $100,000 and then the amount it's suggested for the first round and so on. So I thank you for your comment. Is there anyone else that had anything? So the idea is we'll do 2 revisions between now and sometime before March 22nd, where we'll have a special meeting of the county board and obviously a meeting of the ARPA committee before that. And whether we do it ourselves or Madam Chair puts it up for us, we'll get those details figured out, but that is the idea. So we'll vote on that. March 22nd.
Sounds like a plan.
County board.
Good.
We'll
Sounds
just
good.
take a vote.
Like
Clerk?
option Z at this point.
Option Z. Yes, this is option Z. Hybrid option C.
Work.
Roll call.
what are you voting on?
Well, I guess we don't have, it's not a traditional motion because it's just guidance from the committee,
Oh.
but we're voting
I
on,
think we should pray.
we should pray.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Tepe.
since we are going to call a special meeting, I think we should have a motion to do it. So I hereby move that we go with option D, and that we plan on that we have a 2 review process and that we plan on calling a special board meeting on
March 22nd.
March 25th.
Second,
Stratton seconds.
Kenyon got to you first, Cheryl. Sorry.
8 seconds.
Katie, you were
Okay.
way late on that. Okay, we've got a motion and a second. I think we've had ample discussion. Nobody objected. Clerk, please call the roll.
Bates,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Bras, absent, Gums,
Gums, yes.
Kenyon,
yes.
Leonard,
Leonard, yes.
Martin,
Martin, yes.
Molina,
Molina, yes.
Strothman,
Strathman, yes.
Tepe,
Tepe, yes.
and Sanchez.
Sanchez, yes.
Mr. Chair, can I note that that was a unanimous vote?
Yes, it was a unanimous vote. I love when
Very
that happens.
unanimous.
A motion by Tepe.
Pretty rare around these parts.
Very good discussion.
Okay, almost ready to let you go. Two quick things. Mr. Onzik has some resolutions going to Finance Committee that only one of which is somewhat relevant to this committee. And that is in preparation for us applying for FEMA, he wants to move some money, do some accounting so that we can free up the money we use for mass vac sites, put into a separate account, return that ARPA money. And then that would make it available for FEMA reimbursement for the mass vac site money that we've spent. So he has a resolution that couldn't make it to this committee in time, but he just asked if we could discuss it and give committee consent that it be allowed on the Finance Committee agenda for this month. Is there any objection to that resolution bypassing this
How
committee
much-
and going straight to finance?
How much money are we talking about, Mr. Chair?
I don't have it off the top of my head, but over $1 million we've spent on it.
Oh, it's just money.
It's just money.
Easy come, easy go.
If you want me to find the total right now, I can, but otherwise.
Just like a range.
It's just a way for us to more assuredly go after the FEMA reimbursement money by getting our accounting in place. So any objection to that resolution going to Finance Committee?
Yep, Mr.
Okay.
Chair, I have. a
Oh, Mr.
question,
Brown, go
though.
ahead.
I'm just wondering, and maybe you could talk to Mr. Onzig about this, or maybe Vince and Stephen might have an answer. How does all this come into play now with, at the Health Committee, there was a resolution passed to accept money from the feds for future expense of the VAC center and other expenses related to this COVID stuff. So how does all this come into play?
Well,
I don't know.
so that money you're talking about, I don't believe is going to the vac site. It's going for testing and shoot, I forgot the other term. But I can get more information on it. If we have taken money from federal or state sources and applied it to the vac site, we can't qualify that for FEMA reimbursement.
Right.
So no matter what, the money for the vac site, if we want FEMA reimbursement, it has to come from county. Can't come from any other source. And that's the actions that Mr. Onzik is taking, the actions he is taking to set that up for us. So he's creating some accounts. Those are the other resolutions going to finance.
I'm
But this
sure,
one
I'm
would-
sure he's on top of it. I just,
Yeah.
there's a lot of moving parts here
Yeah.
that need to be.
Yeah, so, and I appreciate his work on this. He turned it around pretty quickly. And it will just free up that money so that we can get FEMA reimbursement. So that approval this morning at Public Health Committee will be going to other things.
Very good.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, I have to leave
And
now.
it's, I'm not even gonna, that's too much. Okay. Ms. Bates?
I have to leave. Thank you. Sorry.
Well, have a good day. Okay, so thank you for
You
being here,
too.
Ms. Bates. Okay, so it sounds we have a consensus that's okay for it to go to the Finance Committee agenda. And the other thing, the RFP for going after FEMA, we need to hire somebody to do that work for us. And we are developing the RFP now. So once we have it put together in essentially a draft form, we'll send it out to everybody to see if there's anything that we missed or that you would want included on it. We'll keep you in the loop on that and we'll get that RFP out as soon as it's done. So any other questions about the work we're doing from committee members or non-committee members?
Motion to adjourn.
No questions, no new business, no old business, no executive session. Mr. Kenyon moves to adjourn. I need a
All in
second.
favor?
Everybody seconds. Teppy, we'll give it to Teppy. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. Thank you, everyone.